Take a seat, take a seat. So I hope you enjoyed this afternoon. Good evening. I'm Pierre Berlin. I'm lead the talent solution team in South Europe and Middle East. I am delighted to be here tonight in front of you because I truly believe, and I hope you share this with me, that we are living a defining moment, a moment of transformation where innovation is key to success. To talk about innovation, it's my pleasure, my privilege, to introduce you our next speaker. She's an entrepreneur, she's an author, she's pretty well known in Britain, she received many honors. She created two companies, she created Coffee Republic. In those honors that she received, I'm not going to give you all the list because the list is pretty long, but just I'm going to name a couple of them. She was named Officer of the British Empire by Her Majesty the Queen. She was named Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum in Davos. And she was named one of the most influential women in Britain by The Independent. She wrote two books. Anyone Can Do It, #1 on Amazon, bestseller in UK, translated in 6 languages, and Switch On, where she brought revolutionary ideas on the business management. You will see, she really brings to life passion and energy that makes success. As I said, it's my pleasure, it's my honor to welcome our inspirational speaker and, since today, a new influencer on LinkedIn, Sahar Hashemi.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for that wonderful introduction. Well, I know this is the end of the day, the end of a busy day, the last slot before cocktails. So really, all I'm going to tell you is tell you a story. I'm going to tell you not a bedtime story, a pre-cocktail story, essentially my life story. And I think the reason I've been invited to tell you my story is because my story will be a story of an entrepreneur and about entrepreneurship. But just before I start my story, I just want to say, for me, entrepreneurship is not about starting a business. What entrepreneurship essentially is in this crazy world we all live in, of change that we can't even keep up with, disruptive innovation, we all have to think like an entrepreneur. So I think that's why I'm going to tell you my story. But just before I start kind of telling you my entire life story, I'm going to ask you all a question. Hands up those of you who, like me, consider yourselves entrepreneurs. Ooh, not many hands. So I see not many hands. Okay, hands up those of you who, like me, consider yourselves a tiny bit entrepreneurial. That's much better. Well, for the many of you that didn't actually put your hands up, the reason why I always ask this question is if someone had asked me 12, 13 years ago as to put my hand up as to whether or not I was an entrepreneur or I was remotely creative, I would have never, ever put my hand up either. When I was growing up, the idea of an entrepreneur, there was really just about one entrepreneur in the whole of the UK, and that was Mr. Richard Branson. And you sort of compared yourself to Richard Branson and thought, well, there's no way I am like Richard Branson. A, I didn't make my first million selling sweets in school playground. B, I didn't drop out of school in some controversial way. The Richard Branson School of Entrepreneurship is, unless you dropped out of school, you're a complete loser with absolutely no leadership quality whatsoever. So I thought, well, clearly I wasn't, creative enough to drop out of school. I studied pretty hard. And I sort of, didn't make any money selling worms to my parents or any of those things. So essentially I thought, well, clearly entrepreneur I am not. So I went and became the opposite of an entrepreneur. I actually went off and became a lawyer. what we call in the UK a solicitor, which is really the most boring form of a lawyer. And very much what happened was I was very enthusiastic, but very, very quickly, I actually realized very quickly upon taking my job in a city law firm that I'd chosen completely the wrong career for myself. Because what I've learned now in life is that ideally in life you should do something that suits your personality. So your work and your personality should be closely aligned. And there are just about two things going for my personality. One is my optimism and the other my enthusiasm. That's kind of really all I've got going for me. And very, very quickly, working as a lawyer, I realized that quite unfortunately, the only two qualities you don't need to be a good lawyer are optimistic or enthusiastic. So I was sort of entirely wasting on what I was doing. So I felt every day when I went to the office, I was leaving about 40% of Sahar behind in the fridge and taking on only 60% of myself. I was sort of putting the work face on. And the problem is back then, it was almost like that's how it used to be. You were not meant to be engaged in what you did. Very much my dad's generation, that's what work was. You put on your professional face, you almost kind of left your personality at the door before you walked in. No one wanted you to be remotely authentic. You were just meant to be employee number, whatever. So I did this, and really the problem was kind of after sort of almost 5 years of doing this, 4 or 5 years doing this, I just kind of realized there was just no fun. And I remember going, where's the fun? We're working the best years of our lives, most of our waking hours. Like, why is this like torture, literally going in for the paycheck? And I remember going to my colleagues and saying, guys, what's wrong with this picture? Why aren't we having fun? And the answer they all gave me was fun, so they're not paying you to enjoy yourself. This is work. And I just sort of just didn't see this connection between why does work have to be boring? But I just accepted that was what it was meant to be, really. And I ended up actually staying in this law firm for 5 years. And by the end of it, doing this sort of routine work, not being myself. By the end of it, I'd sort of lost any kind of optimism or enthusiasm I had, and I'd sort of resorted to bitching by the water cooler, involved in office politics, as one does, kind of not engaged, until something happened which really shook me. And I think sometimes in life, we can be in our comfort zone, and we don't change until something happens, and often sometimes bad happens for us to change. And I got this. I was sort of sleeping nicely in my comfort zone in a way, and I got my wake-up call, my alarm call. What happened to me was I come from a close family of 4, my mum and dad, my brother and I. And in January 1993, my very healthy young dad died very suddenly, very unexpectedly of a stroke overnight. And I just remember it was such a shock to my system, just my dad just suddenly kind of going like that. I just remember the very next morning, I kind of got back and I thought, actually, this whole idea I had of a comfort zone is actually complete illusion. It's in fact a complete sort of false sense of security for me to remotely think I'm in any sort of comfort zone. So I've just got to go out there and do something I absolutely love doing, whereby I could be me doing it. So I ended up leaving this law firm, and the thing about a law firm is, you sort of make your way up very, very slowly. So once you leave, it really is a huge jump, just like out of that world. So I took my first big jump, my first big leap in life. And my motto in life is actually leap and the net will appear. And I've actually taken many, many leaps, but I'll just quickly tell you the story of my first leap, my Coffee Republic leap. I had no idea what I was going to do. I've got a brother called Bobby, one sibling, my brother Bobby. Bobby is 4 years older than me. And he was working at the time in New York as an investment banker for, believe it or not, Lehman Brothers, I have to say. And I remember thinking, okay, let me have a change of atmosphere, have a change of air. Let me go and see Bobby in New York. Let me leave London. Let me leave my routine. And of course, I arrived in New York, and the very first morning I was there, I got up with that very terrible jet lag you get up with when you're in New York, went looking for a cup of coffee. And back then, America was known for horrible coffee. Even we would make fun of American coffee. So I'm thinking, let me go to one of these diners, and they'd bring you a cup and pour this sort of brown liquid. I just literally remember looking for one of these, and I was walking along Madison Avenue, and I was suddenly hit by the smell of coffee beans. And I just kind of literally followed the smell of freshly ground coffee beans, in like one of those sort of adverts you see. And I literally walked in, and I went to this place called New World Coffee, which was a sort of predecessor to Starbucks. And I just couldn't believe it. They had all the stuff about coffee on the walls. I went to order a drink, and I said a cappuccino, please. And they said, would you like it with full fat milk, skim milk, soya milk? And I'm always on some sort of a diet, so I couldn't believe you could get this choice. And they had these wonderful muffins and different sugars. And I just fell in love with it, but I fell in love with it the way you would if you go to France. You might eat pain au chocolats every morning, or, I just kind of very much got hooked on my skinny cappuccinos. And I remember I got back to London, and I was actually interviewing to be an in-house lawyer, because I thought that might be my solution. If I go in-house, I could make it a bit more exciting for myself. But kind of in a funny way, I wasn't getting any jobs, so I was going for interviews but getting no offers. And I just remember it was the 4th of November, 1995, and I was sitting in a Thai restaurant with my mum and my brother, and very casually in the middle of this Thai restaurant, just not thinking about it, I said to my brother, gosh, you know what? I just wish we had this New York style coffee bars, because it's just so boring. I've never not worked in my life before. It's so boring getting up, going to the kitchen, making 2 scoops of instant Nescafe, boiling water, starting my morning like that. I just can't believe we haven't got those New York style coffee bars, so I could start my morning in that buzzy way in one of these coffee bars. It's just such a pity we haven't got them. As soon as I said this, my brother Bobby got the old light bulb. You hear about entrepreneurs getting light bulbs. He said, I can't believe you've said this. There's a company called Starbucks. And I was like, what the hell, Starbucks? And he said, well, Starbucks is a coffee company in Seattle. They say it's going to grow outside Seattle and eventually outside America. And this is it. Now that you've said it, this is the business idea I've always been looking for. This is it. You and I should be the ones to bring American-style coffee bars to the UK. This is like an amazing idea. And my reaction was, hang on a minute, Bob, you got me completely wrong. I meant, why didn't someone else open it and for me to go to it? I mean, I was the customer, so I just couldn't understand why, as a customer, I had to provide a solution to my own problem. It was sort of other people opened them. But anyway, my brother was having none of it. He said, listen, if you don't want to do it, I'll pay you to do some research for me. And actually, being a good lawyer, I remember thinking, okay, great, he's an investment banker, so I can get some money off him. And I calculated, literally in the middle of this Thai restaurant, a quick hourly rate for myself to do 1 week's research. And we used to carry our checkbooks around with us back then, so I got a check from my brother there and then for literally 1 week's research on this, what I thought was a really stupid business idea he had. And the next day, instead of letting this idea, because I think we get something like 600 ideas a day, I basically got up in the morning, got myself to the nearest tube station, or called Underground station, bought myself a 1-day pass on the London Underground, and I got on the Circle line. Those of you who worked in London, the Circle line is this yellow circle. It's got 27 stops on it. And really, that day, my market research was I got off at every single of the stops, pretending as if I worked near every single of those 27 stops to see what there was. And you could see there was nothing. There was a horrible greasy spoon sandwich bars, which you can't even think about if you worked in London in the 80s. Sort of congealed crab mayo that the staff would just turn over, like gross polystyrene cups, really, really bad quality. And I remember that night, having seen what was on offer in London, I just got home and I was like, clearly there's a gap in the market for us to bring these New York style coffee bars to the UK. And it was just so obvious to me. But the problem is, it was obvious to me, but we've got the kind of right brain and the left brain. So my right brain's telling me, this is brilliant, this is just obviously such a gap, I can't believe we haven't got this, this was just going to be amazing. But my left brain's telling me, surely Sahar, what the hell do you guys know about coffee? This is not your area. If it was so wonderful, someone else would have done it. There must be something you're missing out on, because why has no one else done it? What I've learned in life is that whenever you want to think of something new, this sort of left brain is there, and now with this horrible news we're constantly exposed to, the left brain is overactive in putting the fears and doubts. So whenever I get a creative idea and this little voice starts, this little left brain voice, my only solution to my left brain voice is the delete button. if you can't press delete on it, you sort of press mute after a while, and kind of it eventually deletes itself. Then we thought, okay, let's do it. Let's go and sort of do some market research. The problem was normally people start businesses that they've got experience in. It's the most normal thing. You experience an area, you veer towards that. Well, Bobby and I, we had no clue. We were clueless. We were clueless about coffee. We were clueless about retail. We were clueless about catering. So we were entering this world that we were completely clueless about. But I've got these laws, and there's one law I've got in both my books, and I call that the importance of being clueless. There's a lot to be said for not knowing, because that naivety is actually wonderful, and that's how you see opportunities in a way. We weren't blinded by experience. So we basically gave ourselves 3 months to learn all there was about coffee. At this point, we both moved back home to live with my mother, which was a real shock, you can imagine. But when you're an entrepreneur, you can't really afford to pay rent at the end of the month. So we lived together, and we just sort of really immersed ourselves. I remember we kind of went on a training course, because we had no idea about different kinds of coffee. And we went on this Lavazza training course to learn about Brazilian, Java, Sumatra. And we were so enthusiastic to learn about it that without realizing it, we each ended up having 26 espressos in the course of a morning. I don't know if anyone's ever had 26 espressos. But kind of that was just really, you really immerse yourself, you become the customer. And then kind of, I remember saying to Bobby, actually, do you know what, when I was in New York, we didn't really know we were going to copy this idea. So I think I've got to go back to New York, and I've got to take a picture of this coffee bar, because it was just some vague recollection I had, and yet we were turning into business. So Bobby said, yeah, that's a really good idea, go back to New York. And I remember getting a very cheap ticket, buying myself 3 disposable cameras, going back to New York and thinking I'll go straight to that New World Coffee. Starbucks still hadn't come to New York, and I'll take a picture of everything they do. And of course, I arrive in New York really enthusiastic with my disposable cameras, and I start taking a picture of every single little thing they do in this New World Coffee so we can copy it. And of course, by this stage, the idea really caught on in New York. So the manager obviously could see what I was doing, so she was getting quite upset. So as I took my 3 cameras full, she actually followed me onto the pavement as I left and sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, listen, I know exactly what you've been up to. It's really unfair. Can you please give me back the cameras? And I wasn't going to have a scuffle in the middle of Manhattan, so I gave back the cameras and thought, that's fine. You know, we don't want to copy your idea. But I remember thinking, okay, there is absolutely no way I'm going to go back home without pictures of this coffee bar so we can copy it. So I did something that, and I tried taking a picture from the pavement, but I couldn't, whatever. So I did something that entrepreneurs do that I think people don't do enough in large companies, and that is what I call bootstrapping. My bootstrapping solution was I had a couple of cousins who lived in New York. And so basically the following day, me and my cousins pretended as if we were innocent New York tourists taking innocent tourist snapshots of each other in the Big Apple. Picture of my cousin coming up there. You hardly see my cousin, but what you fully see is how they display their pastries, which was part of the brand. Another cousin there hiding, showing how they talked about coffee, which was really new. This is the first time I'd seen employees wear t-shirts and baseball caps. Me outside the coffee bar, another cousin showing the bar seating. And really sort of kind of, when they say you get inspired, this is actually a picture I drew on the flight back of what our dream was, and I'm happy I've kept this because it became the DNA, essentially, of what we did. Again, coming up with the brand, we had no idea what to call it. We just this was sort of, you know, I had no idea about marketing, and I remember just seeing a great quote by Phil Knight of Nike, who said, marketing, just getting people to buy things. So another rule I have is anything worth doing is worth doing badly. When you're innovating, you're going to come up with some corny ideas, and this is basically a very genius idea we had that, thank God, we didn't go with it. But you don't always get it right, and we really considered becoming Coffee 2000. You can imagine how outdated that would have looked. Then we did a business plan. Again, the name wasn't right, but we just did the business plan. And all the business plan is what is it going to do, how are you going to do it, how much it's going to cost you. And in this plan, we calculated we needed to raise £90,000 to open the first store. I thought, well, this is really easy. My brother can raise this sort of money in his sleep because he was an investment banker and they weren't doing any deals less than $1 billion. But my brother had absolutely no idea how to raise £90,000, nor did any of his friends. So we went off to Waterstones and we bought this great book called How to Start a Small Business Guide. And we opened up the chapter, How to Raise Money, and there was a really surprising answer, go to a bank. And we thought, oh, simple as that, kind of go to a bank. And my brother, by the way, does have an MBA as well, so not to mention. Anyway, we ended up calling 40 bank managers. This for you is only the first log of rejections we had of the 40 bank managers we called. Of the 40 bank managers we called, we got interviews with 20 bank managers. Of the 20, the first 19 bank managers said to us, there's no way we'll give you a loan. We said, why not? And they said, well, it's really obvious. There is absolutely no way coffee bars will ever work in this country. And we said, why not? So it's really obvious. Think about it. We're a nation of tea drinking. Tea drinking is what the British are famous for, so what the hell are you doing bringing coffee to a nation of tea drinkers? But basically, I'd done some research, and yes, we were a nation of tea drinkers, but in the 80s, we were drinking 7 times more tea than we drank coffee. By the 90s, only 4 times more. So I'm seeing this is going the right way, but not for the bank manager, which is why us entrepreneurs call bank managers enemies of innovation. This is a letter I wrote to my brother of facts. He was away about us as a bank manager. I'll do a close-up of the bank manager. Lovely. This is for my own satisfaction. It is actually in my book, though, I think. Anyway, so, and the 20th bank manager we saw, the only reason we chose him was because I looked in the yellow pages and it said NatWest, which is a kind of one of our chains, law courts, which meant it was near the law courts where I work, so we thought this was a good omen. And I remember we went to see this bank manager, and I remember we used to sort of drive everywhere and park the car so we could also look at sites. And I remember we arrived there, and we sort of fed the parking meter, and I just took one look at this bank and I realized it was the smallest bank branch I'd ever seen. So I said to my brother, listen, for God's sake, we've been rejected by these enormous banks. This poor guy we're seeing, he's got such a small bank branch, he doesn't even have a cash machine on the outside. This is going to be a complete waste of our time. My brother made a valid business argument, since we just fed the parking meter 2 hours, we wasted our time not to go in. And then we went, and we kind of, I remember starting to make the presentation. The guy was the most unlikely bank manager. Literally, he looked like something out of a Charles Dickens novel, idea of a bank manager. So unimaginative, pale, grey, ashen-faced. And I just remember saying to my brother, for God's sake, this guy hasn't even had a cup of coffee in his life. He'd have no idea what we're talking about. And my brother was like, go on, make a presentation. And this guy just stopped us a third of the way through and said, you know what, that's fine, I'll give you the loan. And we literally ran out, to be honest with you, and we couldn't believe he gave us a loan. And I've been trying to contact him since I wrote my book, but apparently retired bank managers don't want to hear from their old customers. So I've been trying to find out why he was the one that gave us the loan. So the only rationale I've had is I think it must have been the end of his quota, and he must have had some sort of loan quota to fulfill, sort of thing that we did. Anyway, then it was execution, great idea, but how do you execute it? Branding. Everything became Coffee Republic or on Coffee Republic. And the biggest example I've got here is in our first baristas, which is what we call our employees in coffee bars. You all probably now know, they call them baristas. And I remember we had no idea how to get, because we weren't going to be there. So the most important part of our brand was going to be our first 2 employees that we recruit. I remember I had no idea what to do, so someone said, you know what, on Tuesday in the London Evening Standard is catering day, so if you put an advert on a Tuesday, everyone that works in catering will answer that advert. So I mean, we thought, fine, we put a little £99 advert, tiny. The next day, my brother went looking for sites, looking for property. So I stayed at home and I became human resources director. And I basically got 120 phone calls that day. everyone excited about this kind of job we'd put. But the problem was everyone had called me, had worked all their lives in these old-style sandwich bars, giving really bad customer service. I just thought with no time or money in the world could I ever undo these people's bad habits. And even somehow on the phone, I could tell they all had sort of personal hygiene problems on the phone. I don't know how, but I could just... They were so not the Coffee Republic type. And I remember my brother got very angry with me when he got home because he said, "You've just wasted the money, I can't believe it, you didn't find someone." And I said, well, he said, "What's your ideal?" I said, well, I want them to be just like the ones at Pret-a-Manger, which is a chain we have. And they were very good, and their people were trained. And I said, we get them Pret-a-Manger. They are so well trained. We don't even have to train them because we've got no idea how to train them. My brother was like, I don't know how to do it. So we thought, well, how do we do it? How do we get them to be just like Pret-a-Manger? Easy. We nick them from Pret-a-Manger, which is exactly what we did. We went off, we sort of did these little strips of paper with a little job offer, and we approached two very sort of cute-looking guys. They were Danish at Pret-a-Manger and thought they looked really great. And unfortunately, since we didn't really interview them, I remember, we were so nervous trying to poach them that we didn't really kind of say much. We sort of just said, "Have you got the Pret-a-Manger training manual at home?" They were like, "Great." I was like, "Perfect, bring it with you on the first day." And that was basically it. And I remember my brother said, it's really funny because they didn't say much, did they, actually? I said, yeah, don't worry, I think they were quite nervous because their manager was looking. It was only, unfortunately, when they actually joined us that I realized the reason they didn't say much was because they were Danish language students and didn't speak a word of English. And so, but, again, hire for will, not for skill. They had the right attitude, so we could even teach them English last minute. But they came with the right attitude. They were very much our brand. And again, our brand, everything you choose, I didn't realize there were 50 different kinds of napkins that say what your brand is. It's so important. The brand is the sum total of like a million things you do. The cups, I remember the cups you used to have back then. All the cup suppliers said to us, "Sorry, love, the only cups we make are these polystyrene ones. No one's complained." I remember going to all the bakers and saying, "Listen, in America they've got these amazing muffins. They've got blueberry muffins, they've got fat-free muffins, they've got 120 different kinds of muffins in America." Every single baker in the UK said to me, "Sorry, love, the only muffins we've ever baked are yellow, and the only thing they've got in them are raisins." So, kind of everything's against you, but again, you have to do bootstrapping. Just to show you, this is the first store, just to show you that idea was not original or revolutionary. It was a copy. The benches came later, so it was a direct replica. And Coffee Republic was the first coffee bar of its kind to open in the UK. We opened exactly 1 year after we'd had the conversation at the Thai restaurant. And now there are thousands of coffee bars in the UK, and so people, I think, called us something like sort of 7,000, that sort of number. And we were the first. So people always think, well, this must have been an overnight success. This must have been a no-brainer. Well, I don't believe in overnight success. My motto in life is actually it takes 15 years to become an overnight success. People forget to tell you about the whole 15 years of slog. When we first opened our store, no one came in. And when I say no one came in, our break-even sales were £700. So we had to make £700 of sales days break-even. But every single day for the first 6 months, we were making only £200 of sales a day. And when I say £200 of sales a day, I'm discounting my mum, who's coming in 5 or 6 times, drinking as many cappuccinos as humanly possible. So without my mum's excessive consumption, essentially no one came in, because people don't like new ideas. But we worked on it. This was Tanya, our first manager, talked about branding, how different we were, trying to communicate with the customer about our brand. We're from New York. And very, very slowly, sales started creeping towards break even. The following year, we opened one more store. And I remember when we had 2 stores thinking, wow, it's so exciting. We're a big chain now. Which one do I go to? Then we went up to 7 stores. At this point, we actually became a public company. And I remember we had to have a finance director. And I remember saying to my brother, so which bedroom should we put the finance director in? Which is when we actually moved out of my mum's house. Then we moved up to 30, and we heard Starbucks was going to come at this point. This is little us against Starbucks. Then 60, 80, 100. This is for us kind of when we got to 100 stores. Tate Britain opened. We were slowly upgrading everything. The FT named us after Tesco and Carphone Warehouse as the 3rd biggest sort of definitely new British brand. But very much, I think for Bobby and I, we felt at this point that maybe as an entrepreneur, this little baby we brought into this world has grown up. And we felt maybe when you get bigger, companies don't need entrepreneurs anymore. We thought maybe when you get bigger, companies don't need creative types anymore. Companies just need professionals to run professional companies. And we very much bought into this, and we thought sometimes people make founders feel like they've got a sell-by date. And we were attracting people with great CVs, great experience, and we thought maybe it's time to give it to the professionals to run. So both Bobby and I left Coffee Republic at this point. It was April 2001. We had 110 stores. We had a market cap of 50 million. And we decided to sell, and when we sold, the board said, okay, then resign from every position you had, which we did. And it was literally the next morning after I sold my company, and it was during the dot-com sort of boom, that first one, and everyone was talking about exit and stuff, so we didn't think about it. And literally it was the very next day after I'd sold my shares, made a bit of money, but actually completely I had divorced myself from the company I started, that I realized what a terrible, terrible mistake I'd made leaving the company I'd started, because that dream I told you at the beginning, that dream I had when I was a lawyer of loving what I do, of being what I do every day, that dream had come true, which is why, you know, people talk about work and play as opposite words, but I think when you love something you do, work and play are actually the same thing. And no one really told me how traumatic it is for entrepreneurs to leave businesses they start, how attached you are to your business. And I remember I'd taken my mum as a sort of, was meant to be a celebration. We went off to America skiing in Colorado, and instead of celebrating, I felt a real emptiness actually. And I remember we were flying back from the trip where I'd been in a very bad mood, very sad. And in the British Airways lounge, there was a copy of the Financial Times. It happened to be the Financial Times that had covered the story of Bobby and I leaving, because we were public market, there were like delays. And I picked up the FT and started reading my own story of leaving Coffee Break, and these emotions came over me. But I started crying, but not crying. According to my mother, I sort of started howling hysterically in the middle of the airport. And people must have been thinking, what could be quite so sad in the Financial Times that this girl is bawling her eyes out. But really kind of afterwards, out of boredom, I wrote my first book, Anyone Can Do It. And that was to say, listen, we've all got creativity within us. It's not just the Richard Branson types. And this was really for entrepreneurs. Then I started Skinny Candy, another brand, but I won't go into that. But my current passion is Switched On. And Switched On is about entrepreneurship in big organizations. So I'm just going to share with you, because I've told you a bit of a story, but I'm just going to share with you kind of what I feel and kind of what I've learned now from the mistakes I'd made leaving Coffee Republic, and what I see is just so needed in big companies and how easy that is. So my whole idea of Switched On is basically thinking like a startup. The book of, this is a LinkedIn event, The Startup of You. I did write this before that, I must say, but it really is the same. I mean, people are really catching on to this, and I think it's a huge thing coming through. So I've got 6 habits really to take away, so you don't just come back with my own story. There's some sort of takeaway for you. And this is, again, when I talk about innovation, it's just every day doing something a bit different, operating a tiny bit higher than what you do. And really, for me, kind of everyday innovation is the sort of small things that add up to big things. I'm not talking about inventing something amazing. It's just literally operating 1% higher every day. And it's just unlocking the potential, I think, that your teams have. Again, the bigger we get, the smaller we act, and I think that's what I'm trying to encompass here. So my first habit, step into customers' shoes. I say that because, as you know, I was my own customer. I couldn't believe that I had to start a business because I was the customer. But very much, and this idea is that even if you don't start a business, you've got to become the customer. The way to engage employees, the way to retain good people, is to really give them that feeling that they're really close to the customer, because it's not just because it's good for business. Making your focus external brings a lot of satisfaction, I think. People talk, we love our customers, but essentially, the way they think is customers are sort of a body of aliens, and that's how it was when we got bigger at Coffee Republic. They treated customers like they were a body of aliens you were trying to sell your product to in a way. So it becomes very much us, the company, versus them, the customer. And I think we want to have empathy, and I think empathy, people need empathy. Young people that work now, they need the empathy, which is a sort of virtual reality in a way of becoming their customer, going under their customer's skin. At iTunes, again, constantly it was, they wanted it for themselves, they didn't do some research. And IKEA, I work a lot with, they say they want to have pillow talk knowledge of their customers. They want to be there between the pillow to see what the customers, what they say at night, what they need. Because I think marketing, I think that's very true. And again, I don't believe in market research. I think big companies do too much market research. Entrepreneurs can't even afford to market research. Just ask yourself, if I was a customer, would I want this? My favorite quote here is when, I'm sure you've heard it, sorry if you have, Henry Ford, when he was coming out with the first Model T Ford, people asked him, why don't you ask people, do they really want a car? Do they want this? His answer was, and I think that this is so true. And again, again going back to Apple, we figure out what we want. And I think the more you engage your people to think about what they want, the more they become subjective, the more authentic they will be, and the more authentic they will be, the more they will enjoy what they do. And the more you get out of them. The second one I think is very important for these habits is getting out of the office. Beware of bureaucracy. I think bureaucracy kills spirit, it kills creativity, and big successful companies have to be very careful of bureaucracy. It demotivates people, I think. This, again, Genji Genbutsu, go out and see for yourself. When people go out there, they're engaged, they're activated, they're using their creative side. It's sort of busyness, which is busy versus business, what really happens out there. So many of us sit there staring at that dead cheese plant in a boring office, expecting to be creative. And this is not what people want anymore. And I think it's about getting out there and moving out there. And the more stimulus you get, spending time with your customers, seeing what it's really like out there, the more ideas you get. This is, again, I don't know if you know, this is the head designer of Nike. Do you have any idea where he sends his people for inspiration, where they get their ideas from? One would think other sportswear designers. No, he actually sends them to the zoo. Right, that's where you get ideas. And you can sort of almost see that from what one sees currently. That's where you would get the more kind of innovative ideas. The third one, very close to my heart, I was discussing with Pierre, is the importance of being clueless. Tell me if any of these phrases are familiar to you. I think this is the enemy of innovation. It's what I call the expert trap. And the funny thing is that the more successful you are, the more likely this happens. The more successful you are, the more you repeat yourself. Again, Henry Ford was trying to make this conveyor belt go faster, and the people on the conveyor belt were like, listen, Mr. Ford, we have got 30 years experience on this conveyor belt. Believe me, we have tried everything in these 30 years. You can take it from us. There's absolutely no way this conveyor belt can go any faster. Henry Ford's answer. And that's true, and that's... We get too stuck in our ways, in a way. So there's a bit of unlearning, I think, is what we all need. Unlearning, and huge advantage, because innovation, in a way, is the act of creative destruction. So to destroy, you have to slightly destroy the status quo to find new ways of doing things. My fourth habit, bootstrapping, pictures of my cousins. I think there's not enough of that stuff going on in big companies. Bootstrapping is, in a way, the sort of make it happen culture. And I think whereas before, big always won over small. It's not an issue of big or small. I think big is now an advantage. It's the issue of fast over slow. The reason why mavericks or small companies, because there is speed in small companies. In big companies, slowness is the default position, and slowness is the enemy of innovation. So you get these corporate traffic lights and new things don't happen. People are not inspired because they're not able to make change. People just go to the lowest common denominator when they're not able to make things happen. So you need to get speed through bootstrapping. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. You're not going to get it perfect. The comment again from the Startup of You book of Reid Hoffman was, you've always got to be in beta mode. When you're always in beta mode, you've just got something. You've got something out there that you're working on. Whereas big companies have the tendency of being in the final mode, the final drop, which I think doesn't work anymore. So this is about making 2 + 2 = 5 somehow. This, I don't know if you can guess what this is, the first Dyson, but I don't know if you guys can make any guesses as to how many goes this took until he got it right. A couple of hundred? I thought he maybe had 100 of these maximum. And this is the key, these constant iterations, people learning, you're not going to get it right the first time. Innovation is not about some genius spark. It's about constant iteration, constant adaptation until you get it right. Again, this is from the done is better than perfect, move fast and break things. It sort of all says the same, I think. And money is a poor substitute for creativity, which I think with lack of budgets, you actually become more creative. So lack of budgets can help you get things done and become more creative and focus really on the basics. If I had sheds of load of money, I would have done everything wrong. I believe that. My 5th habit is notching up on no's. You heard about my story with the bank managers. But this is what I love. Steve Jobs, when the iPad first came out, apparently that morning he had 800 emails from people saying, this is crap, this is not going to work. 217 rejections Howard Schultz of Starbucks got. So I always think that's why Starbucks is so much bigger, because they had 217 versus our little potsy 29 rejections. This 300 rejections, Walt Disney. And this is my favorite one, actually. So this basically means that 12 publishers would have actually read Harry Potter and thought, this is not worthy of publishing. Which is why I think very much, we think we love the new, but actually we reject the new things. So what you got to realize, when you're doing new things, when you're being creative, you're going to get a lot of no's. And it's a question, in a way, of getting no's until you get the yes. And I believe in this so strongly. If I ever do something the first time, if I get a yes the first time around, I hate it. I prefer to get a no, get no, 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 and then when I get the yes, I can sit back and enjoy it because I feel I've almost earned it. And my final one is this taking 100% of yourself to work. That's kind of very much what I've learned, is there's sort of entrepreneurial passion and performance, and the magic is getting that in the middle. Yes, you need to have structures in a big company, you need to have hierarchy, but you also need to keep that balance in the middle between passion, really igniting people's passion, and also having performance and having targets. But there's a very healthy thing in the middle there, a bit like 100% of you work you. I used to think my dad's generation, you only brought the work you, then there's 100% you, but you got to get that somewhere in the middle so people are able to be themselves. Because I think in this world we live in, fun, I think, is a huge part of it, and that's what's wonderful. And I think to retain and attract talent, we need to genuinely bring fun into the workplace as a very strong strategic incentive. These are my habits. And just the final thing I'm going to say is, like most entrepreneurs, I don't believe in the word luck. I'm actually allergic to the word luck. The way I see it for all of us is, in front of all of us, there's this little conveyor belt. And on this conveyor belt, a bit like a sushi bar conveyor belt, there are these little cubes of opportunity that are going, a bit like a sushi bar, little cubes of opportunity going on this conveyor belt the whole time. If we're in the wrong frame of mind, if we're switched off, in our comfort zone, hugging the status quo, terrified of any change, not thinking of new things, stuck at our desk, looking at our computer, we're not even looking at that conveyor belt. We're just completely switched off. But if you step out of your comfort zone. If you get out there, if you spend more time with customers, try experimenting things, being in that beta mode, then you are looking at that conveyor belt. So next time that little cube of luck pops in front of your eyes, you don't miss it, you see it. And when you see it, you grab that little cube of opportunity that's coming to your eyes. And when you grab it, you take the leap. If you take the leap, I, for one, will guarantee the net will always be there to catch you. That's my story. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Thank you, Sahar. We were discussing and we were thinking, if I may,
Please.
if I can ask you a final question. It's not planned, but a little of improvisation about what is your perspective about work-life balance in the world that you are describing with all those innovation? Could you share with us your perspective?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, Pierre, I don't actually think the word exists anymore, work-life balance, because I think technology has done it such that, you know, work is encroaching over our lives to such an extent that there's no such thing. I mean, when you hear statistics that people check emails when they get up in the middle of the night to go to the loo, they're still checking work emails. People answer work emails on the way to work. So work-life balance was right when it was our parents' generation where they weren't working until they got to the office. So I think it actually doesn't exist anymore. But there's got to be a quid pro quo. That's why if technology is encroaching on your life, then you've got to let your life encroach in a way on your work, because in a way your work's encroaching on your life because of technology. So it's got to be the other way. So I think that's why, you know, companies that don't allow their people to be themselves, don't give them that freedom, then it's a completely unfair thing. And that's why I think it just doesn't exist, work-life balance. You've got to do something whereby work and life are so closely aligned together, you're not even trying to balance it. And you don't know when is life and when is work, in a way, which is the ideal situation.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank
Sahar
you very much.
Hashemi. Okay. Close to the end, but not yet. So I'm just realizing that I'm standing between you and some cocktails party. So I'm trying to be short, and I'm trying to share with you a couple of thoughts that I had today, and starting with your presentation, Sahar. We were discussing about clueless, and definitely I do believe that it is really important that to be clueless and to unlock somehow the creativity, the inner creativity that we have, all of us, to transform our organization. That's my first one. The second one is to win the talent revolution. I do believe that we need to stimulate, really stimulate our entrepreneurship mindset in our company, in our organization. The third one, this morning, you have seen my partner for the Northern Europe, David Cohen, explaining you that we were extremely happy to launch a certification. So I think that we need to be certified, and David, I will be certified at the end of this week, promise you. The fourth is that, yes, as you know, the hiring volume increased of 5% from last year in the world. So we don't have to wait for downloading the mobile apps of LinkedIn Recruiter to be connected and engaged with the best talent in the world. Lastly, in 6 years, we will be 5 billion connected in the world. So think about that. And I think we will then have the capacity for changing really the world with just a little tablet. So let's take the chance to embrace this technological shift and stay connected with the talent and the relationship that matter to you. Dan Shapiro this morning, I really like this idea. Dan Shapiro this morning said, okay, in LinkedIn, we honor people who create dream jobs. People in this room, every one of you. So that's for this reason. We need to hear from you. We really need to be sure that we are meeting your expectation, starting with this conference. So there is something, probably you have some survey around you. We really count on you to go through this survey. We need your feedback. Feedback is a gift, and it is truly a gift that you will make to us to improve and to make even a better conference next year. So I really count on you on that. Final word? 2 words. The cocktails are more close. First of all, I would like to thanks and my warm thanks to the marketing team of LinkedIn who organized this conference, because they work really, really hard, and I just wanted to say thank you particularly to Laurence and Cleona. And now, let's talk about the after party. Let's talk about the after party. So, we have a value in LinkedIn. This is humor. Okay, this is not the only value, but one of them is humor, and that's what is coming next. We are going to have fun together and to enjoy together. So this is my pleasure to announce where is the venue. Maybe I know that some people are starting to know. So it's a pretty well-known place in London. But even if, as you can hear, I'm not English, I'm French, I knew it, so it's pretty famous even outside of London. This is Madame Tussauds place where all of you, we are expecting, and I'm personally expecting to see all of you there. We plan to have amazing, amazing entertainment, really. There will be a live show with a special guest. It's coming just for you. To Madame Tussauds. So, I count on you. How it is going to happen? 6:45, buses. First buses. Last buses, 8. So between 6:45 and 8, make your choice, find a bus, go to Madame Tussauds. You arrive in Madame Tussauds, you say, okay, I'm going to the museum. No, you go to the party of LinkedIn. Okay? So you don't have to pay. You go. But to enter in the museum, you need, of course I don't have it. So you will tell me how it was. You need a badge. On behalf of all the employees of LinkedIn, thank you to join us today. I hope you really enjoy this day. Thank you very much.